Howdy folks, and welcome back to another episode of Nerdstalgic with me, your host Luke, the Ginger Bookworm. And today, I sounded like a children's TV presenter then. And today, kids, we're having wahey, you know. But on today's episode, today is going to be a very special one. It's going to be one that means a lot to me, one that I grew up on most of my childhood, really. It was my first experience with the first-person shooter. It was my first real experience with gaming. And it's really the pinnacle, you know, the cornerstone, the epicenter of my core of why I love gaming so much, of why I'm such a big gamer. And as you can see from the title, I'm going to talk about Halo today. Like I said, one of my favorite topics to talk about. I love Halo to bits. I've been playing it since day one, which is a lot to say considering I was born in '98 and it came out in 2001. So I can't really say I've been playing it, but you know, I've experienced it, I've lived with it, I know about it. Let's go, you know. One thing I want to make clear though before we properly dive in, when we start getting somewhat serious, I'm only focusing on Bungie. I won't be talking about 343. That would be another topic for another day because, to be honest, even though what 343 are doing, even though it is Halo, it isn't Halo. I'll elaborate on that a little bit more as we get on with this video, with this audio. But one thing I will say, the fact of I will do a 343 analysis of their take on Halo, shall we say. And to be honest, that one isn't going to be as positive as this one. But spoilers, you're going to have to wait till next week for that one. But for this one, I'm just focusing on the Bungie era of Halo, the best era of Halo, if you ask me. Also, this one's going to be a bit different. The way I'm going to structure it is I'm going to give you the list of my favourite Halo games from Bungie. There's no best to worst. It pretty much goes from great to good because, in my opinion, it might be biased, but again, it's my podcast, so I can do what I want. Again, it might be biased, but I don't think Bungie ever made a bad Halo game. They made some good ones, and they made some great ones, but I don't think they ever made a bad one. You know what I mean? Even Halo Wars, which I know was done in conjunction with another studio, Assemble Studios, it was still pretty solid for what it was. But I will talk about that near to the end. So I'm going to focus on my favourite, great till good, and then we're going to focus on some of the books, go into a bit of explanation, and then a special mention, and then we'll wrap up nicely. So strap in, this should be a good one. This should be gaming focused, and as always, I hope you enjoy it. So let's crack on, shall we? Let's jump into the era of Halo through the perspective of Bungie, shall we? So, as I mentioned, for me, growing up, Halo was one of those cornerstone pieces to just my childhood. Even though, like I said, I was born in '98 and Halo came out, the first Halo, Combat Evolved, came out in 2001. I still remember it. My dad had it on the PC, and I never really. Obviously, I was only young, so I wasn't that good. So I only really played sort of the introductory level where you wake up on the forward onto Dom, the ship, and then it goes off from there, and straight away you're kind of thrown into this whole sort of alien invasion, and you learn about the ring and so on and so forth. But I only ever got to just that ship battle. But I really loved it, really enjoyed it, blown away from what I was seeing. Again, I was only young, so as far as I knew, this is what gaming was. You know, later on did I find out that up until this point, gaming wasn't as grand as Halo. You know, Halo was the first proper 3D first-person shooter, proper, you know, done. Even though you had like GoldenEye and stuff like that, this was done properly. You know, the best one with open spaces, open skyboxes, no sort of linear. Like the game was open. You know, that's kind of the difference. Where GoldenEye was more linear focused. You know, you were stuck in like in a base or in a small canyon or area, and you had to follow a direct path. Whereas in Halo, you still had that direct path. You had that one goal you had to get to, but the level was open. You know, if you can see what I'm saying, there was more openness to it. So it was the first game to properly do that. And again, having Halo on the Xbox and showing the power of the Xbox, being like, yeah, you've seen PlayStation 1, you've seen PlayStation 2. Now let's have a look at what Xbox can do, and just the power of Xbox and being able to make these big grand worlds and able to bring Halo alive. I feel like if it wasn't for Halo, the whole sort of selling point of Xbox, I don't think it would have worked so much. The whole selling point of the power of what Xbox can do, the hardware can do. Without Halo, I don't think it would have been able to sell as well. And who knows, without Halo, would Xbox still be around? That's an up in the air question. But I do remember seeing Halo from a very young age and just falling in love. My first real, I would say, proper experience playing Halo and enjoying it would be Halo 2. Again, that's one of my sort of all-time favorite sort of Halos, and that was where, for me, it really, really began. As far as I knew, as far as I could remember, as far as I was aware, even though it was called Halo 2, this was just Halo to me. This is what Halo was. I remember playing Halo 2, remember replaying the same missions over and over again. In all honesty, it was always the same mission. It was one where you get into a tank and you've got to go over the bridge. You've got to take down ghosts and wraiths and banshees, and it's just awesome. That whole scene, and the music's just solid. And just remember playing that mission over and over again, never really completing the game, and then watching my uncle and watching my dad play online, and just listening to like Slayer, double kill, kill-tastrophe. It was like Halo 2 and Halo in general was just like rock and roll. It was just the cool thing to do. Everybody was doing it, so you kind of was like, wow, it was just so hardcore. And obviously, like I said, it was the cornerstone, the pinnacle of just like, I love this series. I am embedded, entrenched in this world. And obviously, as I got older, it went on from there with Halo 3 and so on. But so just give you a bit of background, really. Like, I grew up on Halo. Halo was mine. I think that's, if I'm being honest, Halo is probably the reason why I'm such a huge Xbox fan today. Because as I said, Halo was the pinnacle. Halo was the main selling point of the Xbox. You got an Xbox to play Halo. You got an Xbox to play Halo with your friends, to do LAN parties. I never got to do one, but I've seen loads of stories of friends of mine in America where they'd all brought their Xboxes over, and they all had the big box square beast of TVs set up in rooms, and they'd have 4 players co-op screens there, and you had the piece of cardboard blocking the screen, so you'd only see your screen, so you couldn't cheat, and stuff like that. And I remember playing private matches online with like my cousins and stuff like that, was just killing each other, messing about, and just role playing and being stupid. And obviously with Halo 3 and Halo Reach and playing in forge modes and custom games, that role playing, messing about, and just sort of having a laugh went with it. So to say I'm entirely entrenched in not just Halo but in Xbox is a true statement. And again, I've played every single Halo, even Halo Infinite, and I will get onto that near to the end as my griping with that, and I'll explain why I'm such a I make so much noises whenever that weird noises whenever that topic comes up. But moving back onto topic, now you've kind of give you an explanation as to my love of Halo and where it started, and kind of give you a brief sort of example of my experiences with Halo. I'm going to give you a list of from my greatest, best ever Halo game, in my opinion, to a game that's good, but I don't enjoy it as much as the others. None of them are bad. Like in this list, none of them are terrible. None of them are crap or anything like that. They're all from excellent to good, from excellent to great to good. None of them are really bad. Because like I said, I don't think Bungie's era of Halo, any of them are bad in any respect. Again, that's my opinion. A lot of people disagree. And I'm sure looking at my list at the moment of the rankings I've put them in, I'm going to get probably a bit of backlash. People disagree with me, but that's fine. I enjoy the discourse. I enjoy the conversations that these sort of topics bring. So without further ado, let's go into the list. So my number one favorite all-time Halo. This game I played the most out of all the Halos. It was the one where I met majority of my friends, and my friends I've got for life in America. when I did clans. I know it sounds really cheesy, but I was in so many Halo clans. It's unbelievable. We would role play and we would make custom maps and we would pretend to train. And oh, God, it sounds incredibly cheesy, but I loved it. It was great. Like I would go to school and I would come home and I would be on Halo all night until about 1 in the morning, and then I'd come off it because again, most of my friends that played it lived in America, so I had to be on until late to play with them. It got. I don't do it as much anymore, but generally I miss my Halo days, and I'm still got really lifelong friends that I still talk to today because of Halo. But my number one favorite, the one that's brought all that love and all that sort of spirit in me, is Halo Reach. 2010, this game came out. I still remember waiting for this game. I remember I think it was Halo 3 ODST had if you bought it, you had beta access to the multiplayer for Halo Reach. And I remember playing Halo ODST. I'll get on Halo ODST, and I loved Halo ODST. But I remember playing that, and then the beta coming out, and just playing the multiplayer, falling in love with just this new style, this new look, being able to customize my own Spartan. It was just beautiful. Um, and I remember saying to my dad, was just like, the new Halo Reach is out today. I'm really excited. He's driving me to school. I'm in senior school. I think I'm in like at this point. I think I'm in year 8, year 9 maybe, around 2010. And again, I remember saying to my dad, the new Halo comes out today. I want to go. I want to play it. I want to go get it. And we're just like, oh, okay, then cool. It came out today. I was like, yeah, okay, cool. So I went to school, did my school business, come home. As I always do, I went upstairs to get changed. As I got upstairs, there's a package rested up against my TV, and it has Blockbuster on it. Again, this is how old it is. I was like, oh, Blockbuster. Not thinking anything of it, and then it got to hit me with like, no, he didn't, did he? No, he didn't. Um, so I've gone to open it up, and as I opened up and pulled it out, it's Halo Reach. And I just burst into tears. I couldn't believe it because my dad bought it me. It's not that my dad didn't buy me games, and I'm not saying it like that. It's just more the fact I just wasn't expecting it. It was just the fact of it came out today, and I've got it day one. Oh my god, I've been waiting for this game for so long. I was just enamored. Um, and it was really, really lovely of him. And then obviously I went downstairs, said thank you, and he basically told me, but where my school was, about 10 minutes drive around the corner was Blockbuster. And what basically my dad did, once he dropped me off, before he went to work, he's quickly raced down to Blockbuster, ran in, asked me if I got any copies of Halo Reach. Apparently they had a few copies left from the Midlight launch, and my dad bought it there and then. Drove home, stuck it in front of my TV for me to kind of see when I come home, and then he went off to work. And to us, it's a very special moment. It's a very lovely moment in my life. So that was my first sort of really experience with it, and then obviously playing with it and just sort of really getting into being able it. Because at this point, at the point of Halo Reach, Master Chief's story in Halo 3 has ended. And then we'd got Halo ODST, which again was amazing. I really love Halo ODST. Again, that was more centered around set between the events of Halo 2 and before Halo 3. It's very human story, ODST, boots on the ground, that sort of thing. But Halo Reach was 2010. We haven't seen Chief since 2007. So it's been a long time since Chief's story's ended. So you now play as a new Spartan. You are Noble 6. That is you. And again, as a little kid, growing up playing Halo, I'd always wanted to be a Spartan. I'd always wanted to be my own Spartan, and to be given the opportunity to not just create my own Spartan, but choose what color my Spartan is, can choose what my emblem is, and have my emblem show up on my armor. You know what I mean? And to choose my tagline, and just to have customization, would just blew me away. And that the more I play the game, the more I play the campaign, the more I play the multiplayer, I unlock more pieces. And I ended up through the years of playing Halo and getting to a higher rank on the multiplayer and unlocking and buying more armor pieces, I would repay the campaign just to see in the cutscenes what my dude looks like with this new headpiece, with this new armor piece, chest piece, leg piece, anything, any sort of piece of armor. It didn't matter. It was just biblical to see it and to see it moving. And I must have played through that campaign many, many times. Every time I changed my armor, but again, the campaign itself it was solid. And going on to the campaign, as I said, like it was solid. Like I said, you got to create your own Spartan. You're part of Noble Six. You're part of Noble Team. Yeah, you meet George. You meet Emil. You meet Kat. You meet June. You meet Carter. You meet them all of them, and like you just fall in love with this new team in such a short time. The story is written in such a fantastic way that it goes in you. The old Noble Six have died. You're taking his place. A lot of them are like, well, they don't want you to fill in that space. That was our teammate. And so soon that it's been filled, they're a bit standoffish with you. But they know that they've got a mission to do, so they kind of get on with it. That whole sort of like stiff upper lip sort of Spartan, just being like, we're Spartans. We just got to get on with it. We've got a job to do. Then you land. You're on Reach and you go to your plan is to go take out some separatists, which are basically rebels, human rebels that are causing trouble, like pirates, that sort of thing. And next thing you know, you're battling the Covenant, and the war for Reach has begun. And you go on this epic journey of sorrow and sadness, and you just see the world burn. You see a perspective of Halo that you've never seen before. You see the Covenant at their most strongest, because what you've got to keep in mind, Reach, the planet at this point, was the beacon of the militarized human colonies. Everything that humanity has made in terms of military is stationed on Reach. The Spartans were made on Reach. Everything revolves around Reach. This is where the humans, apart from Earth, this is where humanity is at their most strongest. And so for the Covenant to come in and to decimate, and to see the decimation, to see cities being glassed, to see the Covenant just wipe out entire populations and to wipe out Spartan teams, it took into perspective of like, I always just assume Spartans don't die because I've only ever saw the perspective through Master Chief. And it's that whole idea of Spartans never die. They're just missing in action. And that's kind of the part of the lore of Halo, is the fact that when Spartans die, they're never said that they die. You never say a Spartan dies. They are just no longer in action. They're missing in action, because it kind of brings up that whole myth, that legacy of like, you can't kill a Spartan spirit, a Spartan's heart, a Spartan soldier is always alive. And it takes away from the Roman, not the Roman, the Greek Spartans, and obviously the whole legend behind them. It's kind of the same thing here in Halo. So to see that, and then to go through it, and to lose team members as well on Noble, again, I guess it's kind of spoilers, but it's 2010. To lose team members as you go along with the Noble team, and eventually you go from 6 people down to 5, down to 4, down to 3, to eventually it's just you left. And again, you're on this big planet full of war, and you're on your own, and you just feel like you feel lonely, the lone wolf, you know. It's a very heart-wrenching story, and it's one that, one thing I will mention is the fact of, in my opinion, Bungie was done with Master Chief's story. I think Bungie had perfectly and 100% managed to package and mail off the Chief almost, well, almost, that's the wrong word to use, perfectly packaged his story and released it, and it was done. Master Chief's story was finished, was done with. And them doing Halo ODST and them doing Halo Reach was them exploring new avenues, new narrative formats to tell the story of Halo, to tell the story of the UNSC and of the Covenant War, and to show other sides of the war from different perspectives. And that's what they were doing here with Reach. They took different Spartans. They took Spartan, I think, if I remember correctly, I think the Spartans in Halo Reach, I think they're Spartan 2s or Spartan 3s. I think John's a Spartan 3 or Spartan 4, and it's Spartan 2s in Halo Reach, and John, which is Master Chief, he's a Spartan 3, and then we get Spartan 4, Spartan 4s in Halo 4, and then Spartan 5s with Locke in Halo 5, and from there they just kind of lose their way. To be honest, Halo 4 and onwards, it just lost its way, but again, another topic for another day. But these sort of Spartans, the whole Spartan program started on Reach, and I won't go into it at the moment, but the whole lore behind Spartans and what they go through and the mental torture that they have to go through and the mental preparedness they have to, with all the medical stuff that goes, that, it's not a guarantee when you are injected and when you put through the process of being turned into a Spartan that you are going to come out the right way, so say. So you do see the mental trauma, you do see all the stuff that they go through. And you do with Halo Reach, and Halo Reach is a very powerful story, and it's one that, just like I said, it shows a different side of Halo, one of just like not where humanity is winning, but where humanity lost. You know what I mean? And rare do you see a story like that. In gaming, it's always, oh yeah, they haven't lost, they're still fighting. Whereas this, you get to see the start of the war, you get to see the loss, you get to see it all firsthand in front of you, and you're going to get to relive it and experience it. And even though you're a Spartan, you don't feel powerful. But the game, obviously, with the gameplay, tries to make you feel as powerful and as strong and as epic as Master Chief. But at the same time, you are still very much underprepared and overwhelmed at each moment. And again, narratively and gameplay wise, it works seamlessly and fantastically. And one of my great joys of Halo. So that's Halo Reach. Sorry, I got really deep in Halo Reach. Sorry, like, again, Halo Reach means the most to me. It's like I said, it's the Halo I played the most, and it's made the most friends. And like I said, to me, it's the best Halo ever made, bar none. Again, that can be argued. It's just my favorite. But moving swiftly on to number two, Halo 3, 2007. Halo 3 again was me where it properly started for me. Like Halo 2 was where I messed around, and I didn't really take it seriously. I didn't really play the online because my dad only played for Xbox Live for himself and play with my uncle and stuff like that, which is fine. Again, I'm only really young. I can't really sort of really appreciate it anyway. That's completely fine. No hard feelings about it. But for me, Halo 3 was where it really began, playing online with Halo 3 with friends, making loads of new friends, playing co-op campaign. And like I said, with Halo 3, it was the end of an era. It was the end of Chief's story. So everybody kind of took it very solemnly and seriously. And Bungie went off with a bang, like went off with a bang with Reach. They just ended the story perfectly of Chief. They left it wide open for potential sequel, for the potentiality to revisit Chief at one stage or another in the future. But in my opinion, I feel like they had just finished the Chief story, that it's over, that they wanted to move away from Chief now, that they wanted to focus on other stories, which they did with Halo Reach, which they did with ODST. But with this one, the narrative and the story that you go through with this, where from the first, where you kind of learn that Chief, he's going through a lot. Chief is going through a lot of mental trauma. Chief is going through a lot of struggles. He's lost his best friend. You could say he's lost his loved one. He's lost somebody that means deeply to him. And you could even go as far as say that Cortana and Chief have a somewhat love romantic sort of relationship, just not in the sexual kind, but more in this sort of really deep bond, deep connections type sort of connection that they have. And when you know the story of Chief, and you know that really hasn't, he's got friends, he has his own team, which again is not really evident in the games, which I will get on to that as we go on. But in terms of the games, what you see is that you don't see Chief really have friends. His only friend and real life, real proper companion, is Cortana, and that's it. So when he lost her, it took a toll on him a lot. You could see it was very solemn, and it was very serious, and very sort of, I've got to get her back no matter what. And he does, and you follow on the journey with him getting Cortana back, being reunited with her, stopping the flood, stopping the prophets, stopping the rings being turned on and used, and overall just being allowed to finally, after saving the day many times, just be allowed to sit down and rest. And that whole idea of wake me when you need me, and just being put into cryostasis and just to float in space, and that leaves it wide open for a potential sequel. Which they eventually did. Well, 343 did, which again I know I keep bringing it up, but it's imperative that I have to keep bringing it up because we know it's Chief's story goes on, even though I don't agree with it so much. But again, we'll get on to that. I keep bringing it up, I know, and I keep teasing it, but it really angsts me so much. But I try my best to be focused as possible. But as I said, Halo 3, it's the one where I really took it seriously with the campaign, with playing with friends and playing with Forge. I remember playing Forge games with my friends, playing Jenga. It was great playing Infection with friends and Griffball. It's where it all started, really. Halo 3 is where all that kind of stuff started and where it's become like a mainstay with all the other Halos, especially Forge mode. Forge mode was just like was revolutionary. It was something that wasn't asked for, it wasn't needed, but Bungie just did it. And it was like, what is Forge? And then to see the things that people were making, to see the maps, and to see the games that people were making, like, again, me and my friends, we used to role play and be silly and pretend to play characters and stuff like this, and we'd play party games. Again, we'd play Jenga, but the only difference is that you're all standing up on blocks, and then you've got one guy at the bottom with a gravity hammer who's got like fuel rod canisters, he's got vehicles, he's got every single bit blocks, and he's basically got everything, and the guy's invincible, you can't kill him, and he's got loads of jump pads that are aiming at this tower, and the guy's job is to basically get these vehicles and get things and just to throw them at the tower to knock the tower down and to kill everybody. And your job again is to kind of stay on top of the Jenga tower for as long as possible. It's incredible fun. It's the most fun I've had in a game ever. And again, the longevity of Halo is playing online, playing with friends. I think that's what's made Halo, not just the story, but what made Halo last so long was just the fact of people could just get together and play Halo either seriously, not seriously, play competitively, but also have a laugh and a joke, to go to Forge mode and just relax for a few hours and just to kind of like let your creative juices flow. It was something for everybody, no matter what you wanted out of it. If you want a campaign, you've got it. You want it to be creative, you've got it. You want to be serious and proper hardcore multiplayer, you've got it. But if you want to have a chill back multiplayer, you've got it. Whatever it is you wanted out of Halo, Halo 3 had it, and it moved on with that with Halo ODST and mostly with Halo Reach. I think, like I said, Halo Reach was the pinnacle. It was like the swan song. It was like Bungie's going out with a bang, and they went out with a bang, and they took everything that they learned and they put it in. And again, that's why, again, I come back to it. Halo Reach was such an amazing game because it was the end of Bungie. It was like, if we're going to do this, we're going to do this properly, and they did. So yeah, Halo 3, loved it. Number 2, it's one of the one of the greatest. Halo, not even Halo, but 2007 was just a year for gaming. I think in 2007 you had Call of Duty Modern Warfare, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, the fourth Call of Duty to come out. That came out. I think Bioshock came out as well in 2007. A lot of stuff came out in 2000. I think Gears of War 2 came out in 2007 or 2008. But 2007 was just a year for gaming. I don't know what was in the water, but developers just knocked it out of the park in 2007 in terms of gaming. It's one of my favourite years, most definitely. I'm going to have to split this up into 2 parts because I've realised I'm going on to almost 26 minutes with this one part. So I'm going to split it up in 2. So this is the first part, and second part I'll finish off the list with the last 3. So this is the end of part 1. And welcome back to part 2. Sorry about that if it caused any bit of inconvenience. Is that I get really carried away when I talk about Halo. So as I was looking at the clock, I was like, "Oh God, it's getting getting longer, and I'm only on number 2, and I've got 3 more to get through." So I thought I'd split it up into 2 that way. If people wanted to take a break, take a breather for me waffling on about something like Halo. that you could go back, go away and chill. So this is part two. I'm gonna not zoom through it, obviously, but I'm gonna sort of, we've got a lot more time now. We can get through it. So at number three, my third most favorite Halo is Halo 2 from 2004. I've spoken about Halo 2 quite a bit already, but just kind of give you like sort of the a bit more in depth. As I said, Halo 2 is where I started to really sort of get into Halo, messing about online with my cousins and my sister and like my uncle, stuff like that. Never really sort of taken it seriously. One thing I loved about Halo, and reason why Halo 2 is number three, it's not for the multiplayer, it's for the campaign. Like I said, even though I never really completed Halo 2, I never really properly sort of, well, what most people would say, play it properly. I would basically play the same levels over and over again. Um, but it was one of those games that I just, when I put it on, I knew that I was going to have a great time. Because the thing is about Halo 2 was, like I said, Halo 2 was the rock star. Halo 2 was like, Halo 1 was amazing. How can we make Halo 2 10 times better and just blow people out of the water? You know what I mean? Let's expand the story. Let's expand the world. We've got a brand new engine. Let's up the graphics, up the textures. Let's make it rock star. And they did. They had the legendary rift that everybody knows of Halo. You know, and I haven't got a guitar, so I can't do it. But you all know that guitar riff from Halo when you're going over the bridge. It's iconic. In the whole sort of the operatics of, oh, I butchered it. I know I'm butcher. I think whenever I do any sort of type of musical, in my mind I have it, and then when I go to actually do it, it messes up. Um, but Halo 2 was just the epic. It was just like, move over Halo 1. I'm in here now. I'm gonna knock everybody's socks off, and it did. You know what I mean? Nobody thought Halo was going to be as successful as it was, especially the first one. And so it was really sort of mind blowing what it did. Get to 2004, sort of early 2000s, and it was a celebrity event. It was a big thing. Halo 2 was. Everybody was playing Halo, so they needed to come out swinging, and they came out, with a 1-2 punch and knocked everybody out. It was just incredible. And obviously going through Halo 2 as I gotten older, and actually completing Halo 2 and really getting into the story and getting into um, the whole sort of what's going on with Halo, kind of really taking, not really. I knew there was a Halo 1, but my dad didn't have it. He only had it on PC, and obviously at a young age, it wasn't the fact of, oh, I need to go back and play Halo 1. It was just more just the fact of, this is Halo, this is what I know as Halo 2 and onwards. Um, I felt like I didn't really need to know the story from Halo 1, because they do such a good job kind of just following it on and get the story moving, get the narrative going, that they didn't need to recap. They gave a few hints here and there, but as a new sort of player, going in at a young age, it was never the fact of, oh, I've missed out. It was more just the fact of, this is epic, this is grand. I'm a giant, hulking badass with a gun, and I'm taking out these aliens, and it's just like, pew pew pew. It's incredible, and you got the amazing music in the background to pump you up. It was just, oh, it was just one of those sort of moments where I knew this is what I wanted to do, not just to play games and experience video games, but from there I feel like I knew that I wanted to know how games are made. I wanted to get into gaming. um like I said, Halo was that pinnacle for me. Halo is still that pinnacle for me, even though that the foundations are still strong. The things that have been added on since Halo Reach, Halo 4, and so on and so forth has very much made the structure quite brittle. The foundations are very strong, so this building won't fall. That cornerstone won't fall. But I feel like some of the top tier, I say top tier, the new additions on top of this plinth are going to crumble and be forgotten, shall we say? Yeah, left to the wayside. Um, but yeah, Halo 2, number three, one of my favorites. If anything, it's just the music. The story's great. You get to play, like you got to play as the Arbiter. You were no longer played as Chief. You know, you got to see Halo from another perspective. You've got to see Halo from the perspective of the Covenant. How the Covenant see this war? How the Covenant see humanity? How the Covenant see the Forerunners and the Prophets and the technology there? Again, it's very fascinating. It's very it's something that nobody expected. Everybody thought like this is going to be another story with Chief, and then to go into it and actually find that it's more than just that. It's you get to play as Arbiter, which became a standing favourite. I used to love the Arbiter missions. I used to think that the Arbiter missions were the hardest. I used to struggle with the Arbiter missions the most because when you was with the Arbiter, because you was on always on installations, you battled the Flood, and they really ramped up the Flood in Halo 2. The Flood were a lot more. I was going to say versatile, but a lot more aggressive. You know, so it always made Halo 2 a little bit more challenging for me. But I still enjoyed it, and I loved the Arbiter. And it was just having that dynamic of like you've now seen the war from Chief's perspective. Now let's have a look at it from Arbiter's perspective, from the Covenant's perspective. You know, and it also links in with Reach as well. Again, at this point, you only really knew about Reach because of the books. If you didn't read the books, you didn't really know what Reach was. But again, it didn't matter because the narrative was so strong and the story was so strong that when they mentioned Reach, I didn't take any notes of it. I didn't need to know. It wasn't relevant because, like I said, the story just they took the story from Halo 1 and they bolstered it up. They gave it a much stronger, bigger foundation, and they threw it at you, and it wasn't even like let's throw it at the wall and hopefully it sticks. It was let's throw it at the wall and let's frame it and call it a Picasso. You know what I mean? It was a masterpiece in storytelling, um, and it links in with with Halo 3 so well, and Halo 3 does a great job of continuing it and eventually ending it. So yeah, Halo 2, like I said, number 3 of one of my sort of favorites. And number 4 is Halo 3 ODST from 2009. One thing I love about Halo ODST is again it's another one of those games, kind of like the Arbiter. We weren't expecting it, but when we got it, it was a breath of fresh air. It really was. Sorry about that. I had to go have a drink of water. But like I said, it was a very much a breath of fresh air because, like I said, up until this point, 2007, Halo 3 comes out. Master Chief, he does his, he's been a badass. We've played with Chief from Combat Evolved to Halo 2 to Halo 3. We know his story. His story's begin and ended. His trilogy is done. And as I said, Bungie's got to this point now where they want to tell more stories in this world. In my opinion, like I said, I feel like Bungie had basically, ended the story. It ended the concept of the Chief and wanted to move on. And they were doing well. Like I said, Halo 3 was meant to be an expansion, a DLC expansion for Halo 3. And they ended up doing its own game, which I'm completely fine with them doing their own game for it. Firefight was a fantastic mode in there, which I never thought, like, again, Firefight, you'd never think that you wanted it. And then when it came, it was like, oh, this is actually really cool. And again, I didn't play Halo 3 online that much with a lot of my friends. In all honesty, I mostly just played Halo 3. One of the upsides of getting ODST was that once you had ODST, you could every sort of map pack that was released for Halo 3. Because again, this is back in the day we had to play for maps. Nowadays, you get maps for free. But back in the day, if you wanted a multiplayer map, you had to pay for it. And if you bought the Halo 3 ODST collection, you got all the Halo 3 maps. Obviously, I never paid for the maps, so for me to be able to play with my friends in Forge mode on these newer maps, I used to have to put Halo ODST in so I could play Halo 3 online, and because it was the same system, just so I could get access to the new map. So that's what I mostly used Halo ODST for. But that doesn't distinguish the fact that Halo 3, Halo 3 ODST wasn't a good game. ODST was a good game. Like I said, I hate to use the words. I used it earlier. I hate to use this phrase, but again, it was a very much boots on the ground sort of story, because you're not a Spartan at this stage. Fair enough, you're an ODST. You're an orbital shock drop trooper. That's what ODST stands for. Your special forces. Granted, you're highly skilled, but you're not a Spartan. You don't have shields. You're not augmented to be super fast, to be super strong. You just don't have that. You are a special forces soldier that's been dropped on New Mombasa. The whole point of the idea of you being dropped, you was meant to be dropped on the Covenant carrier to assassinate the prophets. But as you did that during the events of Halo 2, as you drop down to land on it, the Covenant ship goes into hyperdrive. It goes into slip space, and as it goes in, big explosion, and you get knocked off course, and you lose sight of your team. You crash land, knocks you out, and you've got to hunt for your team. You wake up, it's night time, you don't know where you are, you don't know what you're doing, and you've just got to try to catch up with the rest of your ODST threat, your new team. You play as the rookie. Again, you don't really talk, you don't say anything. Very silent protagonist, and the whole story, the whole narrative is the world, is Mombasa, New Mombasa, the city that you're in. The narrative is that it's nighttime. You don't know where you are. You don't know what happened. You just woke up at night, so you've got to figure it out. And the story in the world is telling a story, as well as the bits of clues that you find in the world to tell you the story of what happened to your missing teammates, where they went, and you get to play those moments and play as those teammates to kind of see their experiences, how they're trying to find each other as well and meet up. And it's a very, like I said, I hate to use the word, but I'm using it again. It is a very much boots on the ground story. You are a human. It's a very human story. It's a very grim and gritty story. I'm going to go off a bit topic here, but one of my favorite Star Wars movies of all time is Rogue One. The reason why I love Rogue One so much is because even though I love Jedi, and even though I love the Sith, I love everything to do with that, we had seen it for so long, for so many years, for the original movies, for the prequels. It'd been done for so much that it wasn't stale. I would still happily watch Jedis and Sith go at it forever, But I wanted something different, and Rogue One was that different. It was showing the rebellion for what a rebellion actually is. Because in real life, and I know Star Wars is Star Wars, it's not real life, but the idea and concept of rebellion is based off real life concepts of real life rebellions. And in rebellions and in war, there are moments where you have to make the hard choice. You have to have people like Cassian Andor, for example, who will be that spy, who will kill people, who will kill informants and stuff like that, who will do the dirty work to assassinate people, the real sort of non-Disney hardcore sort of things. And that's what I love about Halo ODST. It's the very grim, the gritty. You are human. You're not, you can't run into battle like you could with Master Chief. If you run into battle, you're going to get your ass kicked. You're going to get killed. So you've got to sneak around. There's going to be patrols of Covenant, and you've got to use the darkness, and you've got to hide. Because if you get shot too much and there's not a medikit out there, you can't. Your shields and your health bar is not going to regenerate. Your health doesn't go up until you find a health kit. But you're in a huge city, you know what I mean? And there's not many health kits about. The Covenant have took over. The Covenant are running the city, so you can't afford to run and gun. You have to play it smart. You've got to sneak around. You've got to use your night vision. You've got to assassinate, and you've got to kill grunts while they're asleep and stuff like that. Like I said, I just really enjoyed Halo ODST for what it was. For the story it told. It wasn't a very long story, but like I said, it's a very human story. And we get Nathan Fillion as Buck, and who doesn't love Nathan Fillion? To be honest, I still to this day wish that if 343 would do a Halo ODST 2. I would love a Halo ODST 2. I think it would be great. I think that's what it needs. I think we we need another sort of, again, I keep saying I hate this word, but I'm using it again. We need a very much human boots on the ground story. You know what I mean? We need a very much like, I'm not a Spartan anymore. I'm an ODST, special forces, and I need to be smart. I need to be clever. I can't go in all guns blazing because I'm going to die. Because I haven't got shields like the chief, so I can't afford to do what the chief does. So I've got to be smarter, be cleverer. And again, that you can take that in many different forms. Gameplay wise, you can change it for gameplay, and for story wise, you could rope in the whole idea of the story. And because we know that we're not Spartans, so we don't have shields and stuff like that. So again, it writes itself for you. The player already sort of quickly figures out the fact of, well, I'm no longer a Spartan, so I probably can't play like a Spartan plays. I've got to be a little bit more smarter about it. And yeah, I would love another ODST. Would we ever get one? Well, probably with 343, probably never know. Um, we never get my words out. We probably would never get one. That's what I meant to say, not never know. But then again, I could say we never know. We might get one, we might not. We never know what will happen, but I don't think it will happen, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's number 4. And finally, my number 5, and again, I feel this is the one I'm going to have the hate for because I've left it to the end. But I'll try my best to explain it. At number 5 is Halo Combat Evolved, the first Halo, Halo 1, from 2001, November 2001, to be more specific. The reason, the reason why Halo 1's so far down on the list is because, as I've kind of hinted at, as I've explained, when Halo came out in 2001, I was only young. Like, I was born in 98. So let's go. So 1, 2, 3. I was about 3 years old, probably going on to 4. Actually, it was November 2001, so I was 4 years old. My dad had a computer. Again, it was a very old sort of computer. It wasn't like, computers you get today. And it had Halo on it. And again, I think it was only the Halo demo. I don't think he had the full game. And I remember seeing it, not really knowing it was Halo, not really know what it was, but I just remember it, and it was like, oh, this is fun. I like this. But again, it was too much of a. It wasn't a game for me for my age. It wasn't a game I was really into. It wasn't really a game I was good at. So I never really experienced it. And it wasn't until like 2004 when Halo 2 come out, where even though it was called Halo 2, that didn't matter for me. This was Halo 1. This is my experience. This is my introduction to Halo 1. And obviously, being of a young age, I didn't really care to go back and play Halo 1. It was just like, I just want to play Halo 2. That's what I want to play, and that's it. And then I was happy then to go off and play Halo 3 and so on, so on and so forth, with never having to play Halo 1. And then, if I remember correctly, I think it was like 2000, 2010, 2011, that the anniversary edition, yeah, I think it was about 2010, 2011, yeah, 2011, that the anniversary edition of Halo Combat Evolved came out for the Xbox One. And it obviously up-res graphics, up-res textures, and that you could switch between the original graphics from Halo 1 with the old original Xbox days, and you could have like modern 360 graphics you could switch between, and you could replay the game. So I remember doing that. I remember went to Blockbuster, and I think I paid like £7, and I rented it for a week. And I remember I blitzed through it within a few days. I really enjoyed it. Again, it was difficult. One thing I will say is Halo 1 was difficult, and even if you ever listen to interviews that the designers ever have about Halo 1, they will admit that there were certain things where, like, certain levels were a bit too long, and there were certain technical issues that they had to deal with. Again, it was only a small team at the original Bungie that made Halo 1, so there was a lot of constraints, and there was a lot of things they had to do to kind of make the game last longer, and that means having longer levels and stuff like that. And so Halo 1 was difficult, and even to this day, I still find it a bit of a nightmare to play. Even on sort of like a normal difficulty, especially when you meet the Flood, the game's a nightmare, because they just swarm you. But yeah, that's the reason why Halo 1's so low on the list, is mainly because I have the least amount of experience with it. I still enjoy it, and like I said, this whole list, there's not a single bad egg. They're all good, fresh eggs. It's just the fact of I haven't had that much experience growing up and playing Halo 1. I only played Halo 1 later in life, that I can't really sit here and go, well, Halo 1's the best game because it's the first ever Halo. Because I can't say that because I never really properly got to experience it, you know. So that's why it's at the bottom of the list. So I hope I've really sort of justified why it's on the bottom of the list, and sort of reason why people should sort of, not beat me up in the comments being like, I can't believe you put Halo 1 on the bottom of this, because like I said, it means a lot to a lot of people, especially to us Halo fans. If it wasn't for Halo 1, we probably wouldn't have, like I said, we probably wouldn't have the Xbox nowadays. The Xbox wouldn't be as big and as grand as it is. And who's to say if the Xbox would have survived, if it would still be around, um, if Halo didn't exist. So, we owe Halo a lot, not just for Xbox, but again for what it did and how it changed the genre and how it changed gaming completely. So there is a lot of love, and I do love Halo. But yeah, it's on the bottom of the list, and I do apologize for that. But at the same stage of like, I hope you understand as to why I put it to the bottom of the list. So those are my top 5 sort of favorite games from Bungie. That's all 5 of them actually. They only really made 5 games. Technically 6, but we'll get on to the technical 6th one in the minute. But yeah, so that's my list. That's the end of part 2. What we go on to now is the books. And there's a lot of books, but don't worry, I'm not going to talk about all of them. I'm going to talk about one specific one. So let's jump on to it, shall we? Now, on to the next topic, which is the books, the Halo books. For a lot of people, don't even know Halo has books, which again, I don't blame a lot of people, because I only found about them, a lot later on in life, around about the Halo 4, Halo 5 days, when I realised how important they are to those games. But Bungie themselves, they only did 7 books. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to go into talking about every single book. I will just kind of tell you the name, quick explanation, and then moving on. So, book number 1, Halo: The Fall of Reach. This one is set again before Halo 1. It's Master Chief's journey, not just becoming a Spartan, but also the fact of what he goes through with his war with Reach, and we get to see Master Chief's team and his friends, Fred, and stuff like that. I can't remember the Master Chief's team. I know it sounds bad as a Halo fan, but we don't get a lot of them. Really, you only get to see them really in the books, and then eventually they were shown in Halo 5. But then when they were shown in Halo 5, majority of people didn't know who they were, because the majority of people hadn't read the books, didn't know there were books. Unless you were a really hardcore Halo fan, most people don't even know the books exist. But Halo: The Fall of Reach kind of follows on before the events of Halo 1. Then we've got Book 2, Halo: The Flood. This is kind of a retelling of Halo 1's campaign. Obviously, as books do, books add a little bit more detail, a little bit more sort of story that they can't really do in a fast-paced first-person shooter. There's one thing I will mention in this that I really do love, is the fact of, in the Flood, in the book, it really goes into detail talking about how Master Chief, how human they make Chief to be. Because one thing you see in the games that you never get to see Chief as a human. He seems like a walking statue. He's just a man on a mission. That's it. And obviously, as the Halo games go on, you get to see the more human side come out of Chief. But in these Halo 1 days and Halo 2, you don't really get to see that. So in Halo: The Flood, he's very humanized. He's very much like the fact of showing and mentioning that the Chief is scared. When the Chief first sees the Flood, he's terrified. He's scared. And as he's fighting through the Covenant, he's worried that he's going to die, And there's one little moment in this story that I really love, where as Chief is going down in further and further deep into the installation on the Halo ring, he, after battling tons and tons of Flood, he sees the body of a Marine, and he basically realizes after looking at this Marine and listening to the Marine's audio log that he had fought his way all the way this deep into the installation on his own, fought against the flood. And what you've got to realize is the fact of, and this is what Chief realizes, is I'm a super soldier. I've got super strength, super speed. Um, I've got power armor. I've got strong shields, and I've got the best training ever. And even I struggled to get to this point against the flood. This Marine, with no super soldier serum, with no battle armor, with no shields, basic training, was able to get this far. And it's that very human sort of moment where sort of Chief kind of sits down and kind of bows his head and be like, respect. I struggled to get here and I've got all my armaments. You got here, and if I struggled, what did you go through? And still, obviously, like I said, the Marine's dead. The Marines was still died, but it's just kind of a pinnacle to show the whole idea of the human um, need to survive, the human want to prevail, um, and to keep going. And again, Chief really honors that. And again, it's a really sort of lovely moment inside in the book. But if you played Halo 1, then you basically know the story of the book, The Flood. But I still recommend give it a read because it is a fun one. You get extra details. And then you get book 3, Halo First Strike. This book takes place after the events of Halo 1. So it basically explains how the Chief gets from the long sword that he takes from when the installation blows up at the end of Halo 1 and how he gets back to Earth and where Halo 2 starts. So it kind of bridges the gap between them. Then we've got Halo Ghosts of Onyx. This follows a different Spartan team. This follows Halsey on the planet Onyx. And follows, it tells a bit more the backstory of how the Spartans are made and Halsey herself. Then you got Halo Contact Harvest. This is the this story follows on Sergeant Johnson. We all know that guy. I know what the ladies like. Sergeant Johnson, his story, and basically we learn about him and now that he was basically up for being a Spartan, and he's technically a Spartan 1. I know, a bit of a revelation there. Who knew? But yeah, Sergeant Johnson was one of the first candidates for the Spartan program. He was a Spartan 1. But Contact Harvest was the first planet that the Covenant invaded when they originally planned to go to war with humanity. Harvest was that, and obviously Johnson's fighting the Covenant there. And again, it's a very sort of I say I hate the word, but I'm still using it. Again, it's a very boots on the ground human story with Johnson fighting the Covenant for the first time. And then book 6, Halo: The Cold Protocol. The Cold Protocol, to give the most basic explanation of what the Cold Protocol is. It's a protocol that is used by humanity where if two ships are fighting, if a ship is in battle with a Covenant fleet, that if they know they're going to lose, that they self-destruct. They wipe all their drives and they self-destruct. Because what the Covenant like to do is once they have beaten a ship, they like to raid the ship and to take it for any bit of technology, any data that it holds. And basically, the whole idea of this protocol is to sacrifice yourself so the coordinates of Earth are never revealed, so the Covenant never find Earth and sort of take it on. Because at this point, we've seen what they've done to Reach. We've seen what they've done to Harvest. We don't want that to happen to Earth. Earth should, if anything, be the last safe bastion. Where we make our last stand. It shouldn't be. We can't afford to fight them on Earth, and we can't afford to fight them everywhere else. So that's basically what the Cold Protocol is, and it's going through the whole idea of what the Cold Protocol is and who the guy was who started the Cold Protocol, and he's kind of give a bit more backstory into that. And it's one of my sort of favorites because again, it just brings the idea of this whole concept of we have to keep fighting, and we have to make sure that they never find Earth. Um, so it's a very interesting story. And then finally, book 6 is Halo Evolutions. It's a short it's a well say short story. It's a big book full of short stories for different sort of parts, written by different sort of writers. Um, and each story deals with some deal with Spartans, some deal with humans, some deal with the Covenant, and it just kind of gives you that extra sort of small backstory, small tidbits of different events during the events of Halo. Now, all these stories are amazing, all the books are amazing, and I could go into detail with all of them, but if I did that again, I'd be here all day because we all know how I like to waffle especially when I'm passionate about something. So I won't do that, and I won't put you through it. But I will go into the fact of my favourite book out of this whole series of this Bungie collection um, is Halo: Fall of Reach. The reason being is because one of the things with like I said with Chief is the fact of in the games he's very much stoic. He's very much the hard nails, kind of like Marcus Phoenix, kind of they're very hard as nails. Don't show any emotion. I've got a job to do. I'm going to go do it. And as the games go on for Halo 1, 2, and 3, especially when you get to around Halo 3, you get to see the fact of he is battle scarred. He's been through a lot. You know, he has got a lot of trauma. He's got a lot of mental sort of struggle. But again, he's the fact of he needs to stay focused. He needs to be focused on the mission because if he stops, the moment he stops being focused, that's when things start going wrong. And the one I love about the Fall of Reach is because it takes you back to the fact of John as a young child was kidnapped. He was forced into having to become a Spartan. He's been put through rigorous training to be the best, and he was told by Halsey that he is the best and he's better than everybody else. So he doesn't have a lot in terms of friends. Kind of like Ender's Game, kind of like brought up to believe that he's the best of the best, and kind of put against all the other sort of children. And you get to see the fact of stuff that he goes through, the Spartan program, the rigorous training, the injections of all the different sort of chemicals experiments that they're doing to enhance speed and focus and strength, and what it really means to the old barbaric ways of how Spartans were made. Because Spartans, when you get to the Spartan 3s and 4s and so on, the techniques have been refined and improved. But the Spartan 1s and 2s, what they went through to become Spartans was very sort of, Frankenstein's monster sort of thing. It's very sort of dark, and um, it puts through a lot, and there are a lot of people who don't survive the process. A lot of people end up becoming mentally unstable and becoming psychotic, so going crazy. And some of the short stories in the final book that I mentioned, go off and talk about Spartans that just lose their shit and become psychopath murderers with super strength or super speed. Um, so Spartan 2s are very strong, very fast, not just mentally but physically strong. And compared to all the Spartans that come after, they are less. They're still strong, but they're not. You'd never be as strong as a Spartan 2. A Spartan 2 is the pinnacle of what a Spartan is, and that's why. Um, whenever you see a lot of the newer Spartans, they have less armor and stuff like that because they don't need it as much. Because again, the process has been refined that they don't need the so much big armor because they're not as strong. Because you need to be very strong to carry the Mjolnir armor that is given to Spartan 2s. But yeah, I really enjoy it. This gives a deeper backstory into um, Master Chief and what he went through growing up, and obviously a more sort of in-depth idea of what Chief goes through with the Reach and how the fall of Reach. And for a lot of hardcore fans, before Halo Reach came out, the game, and for a lot of fans, that is all we knew about Reach was Chief's perspective on Reach, on what happened. But as I mentioned, the first 3 books from Halo: The Fall of Reach, Halo: The Flood, Halo: First Strike, all focus on Master Chief. For it's The Fall of Reach is the prequel to Halo 1. The Flood is an extended story of the campaign of Halo 1, and then Halo First Strike is a prequel to Halo 2, and then Halo 2 goes off, and then Halo 3. And then from there, Halo Ghosts of Onyx, Halo Contact Harvest, and Halo Code Protocol, and Halo Evolutions. Those stories, those 3 stories, and that 1 story collection is expanding the world of Halo, is moving away from Master Chief, is moving away from the concept of Spartans and moving into the idea of what else is going on in this world. You know, learning more about Sergeant Johnson and learning about the First Contact War in Harvest. You know, learning about the Cold Protocol, what soldiers having to go through and ship captains have to do to defend, to make sure that Earth is never found by doing the Cold Protocol, to learning more about Halsey and learning more about the Forerunners and stuff like that in Ghosts of Onyx. It's very, 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 it's very deep, and like this kind of enforces my opinion is the fact of Bungie up until this point was up for ending the story of Master Chief. They had done the story of Master Chief. His story was over. They had done 3 books on him that kind of expand and kind of give an explanation of what he did before, what he was doing during, and what he was doing before Halo 2. And then the story goes on, and the story ends with Halo 3, and they just expand the lore from there. And again, it just reinforces the idea of Bungie just wanting to move on, not just from eventually not just moving on from Halo in general, but also just moving on from Spartans and moving on from Master Chief and telling new stories in this world, which they did with ODST and Halo Reach, which I will expand on in a minute. But in terms of the books, they are all worth a read, especially if you're a Halo fan or if you're a fan of video games. Definitely give them a go. I think I said this before in a prior episode, but just because a game is just because a book, shall I say, is based off a video game, doesn't mean it's not good. There have been some stinkers. Don't get me wrong. I've read some ones that have been, quite terrible. But majority of the time, if you love that world and you love that game, you will. If there is a book based on it, you more than likely you will find some enjoyment in the books, if not complete enjoyment. So I always recommend to give the books a go if you want extra details, extra backstory, and these books give that completely. So I highly recommend them. So yeah, that's the books. So moving on to my grander sort of expand on why I think Bungie is moving on from Master Chief. So as I explained in the prior topic, as well as the rest of this sort of podcast in total, my opinion is that Bungie had decided to move on. That Bungie had basically gone, we had told the story of Master Chief. We had explained it, we'd give backstory, we've done the current story, and finally, Chief's story's ended. He saved the world, saved the Milky Way galaxy. He's done. We've left it open if we want to go back and revisit Master Chief at a later date. But as far as we're concerned, it's done. And then they moved on and did Halo 3 ODST, which again I know was DLC, but it was still a new story that wasn't a Spartan, following ODSTs. A very boots on the ground story with humans, very dark, different take on the whole idea and concept of Halo, but still being very much Halo. And then going on with Halo Reach, brand new Spartans, finally getting to show us what happened at Reach, because again, like I said, most people didn't know or haven't read The Fall of Reach. They don't know the story there. So to give fans a new sort of perspective on this is Reach, this is what happened. If you read the book Fall of Reach, you can see Reach from the perspective of Master Chief, of John. But here's the story from Noble Six, a new Spartan team. You get to see their story and see their struggles and stuff they're going through. And it was a lot where I know that Bungie didn't make Halo Reach on their own. They did it in conjunction with 343, and they basically, in my opinion, and this is what it feels like, they took Halo Reach and they went, okay, this is the story, this is how it's done. Kind of like, this is how we make a Halo game. This is how we get Halo games made. Um, you know, we've set the scene, we've set it up for you. It's now up to you. And at this point, Bungie went, okay, we're moving away from Halo. We're going to leave Halo with 343. We've trained them up. We've told them what needs to be done and what to do, and that's it. And then I think the whole idea and concept was the fact of Halo is now yours. Go do something with it. Go do something new. Go do something that's different. And I think that the guessing was, and the idea was the fact of, well, we've shown you that we don't need Master Chief, that we can do a story in Halo that doesn't require Master Chief, and this is how you do it, and you helped us do it, and we've shown you how to make a Halo game. Go forth and do it. And one of the issues, I'll talk about it briefly here, and when I finally get around to doing the 343 episode, I'll go into it in more detail. But it feels like 343 went, yeah, okay, yeah, we understand, we get it, we know. Bungie left, and 343 was just like, I have no idea what to do. Kind of like, I hate to use the word, but kind of crap themselves. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know where to go with the story, and was just like, well, Master Chief is out flying and floating in space somewhere. Maybe we can do that. So instead of following on doing new stories, new Spartans, new aliens, new characters, they just went the whole route one. Let's bring back Chief. Um, let's bring back the Covenant, but they're not really the Covenant. They're a subset, like a splinter group of the Covenant that have gone rogue, but it's still the elites, still grunts, still jackals. And this time, let's bring in the Forerunners, and let's put it on a planet, but it's not really a planet. It's like a shield world, and let's just go from there. And it's like, okay, that's cool, but we're done with the Covenant. The Covenant is demolished. Is gone. The elites, the Sankheli, have gone off, and the Sankheli and they've gone off to basically liberate their own planet, Sankhelios. The everything that was the Covenant has been demolished, is gone. We're in the Milky Way. Go do a Mass Effect. Go do a Mass Effect Andromeda. Go do something, different. You've got this whole universe. You've like one of the things that annoys me is the fact of, like I said, Bungie ended the story of Halo perfectly. The story of Master Chief, fantastic, done, amazing. In a little bow, tied it up, out the door, done. Hall of Fame, best trilogy ever, right? They'd done it. And they did a fantastic job at telling stories that weren't, Master Chief stories in ODST and in Reach. And it kind of left it open, the fact of, there are more stories to be told in this world, that this Milky Way galaxy is bigger than we know, that there could potentially be more life out there that's not Forerunner, or is not the Covenant, and all the races that are in the Covenant. So 343 were given a clean slate of just being like, go off and prosper, go do something new. So as somebody who, fair enough, I only really studied game design in university. I've never done it in practicality, actually in an industry, sadly. But even so, if I was given Halo and a clean slate, and they said to me, okay, your job is to carry on the Halo sort of story, I would go back into the lore and be like, okay, so Bungie ended the story Master Chief. Master Chief's still around floating in space, but his story's over. I'm going to leave that because that's Bungie's. Maybe within 10, 20 years, if we're still about making Halo games and we're done successful, maybe in 10 to 15 or so years, we'll come back and we'll bring Chief back for a big grand sort of, reunion. But for now, let's go be explorers. The war is over. Humanity no longer has to worry about the Covenant. The Covenant is done with this. We've got an alliance with the Sankheli. We've got the Ark. We've got access to Forerunner technology and Forerunner textbooks, as well as also being the keepers of the key, the reclaimers to keep the key of of fire in the Halo rings. So let's go be those keepers. Let's go be those archetypes. Those what the Forerunners were meant to be, but weren't. Let's go explore the universe, the Milky Way. And in a way, Halo 4 kind of does that. The Infinity ship was built using Forerunner technology with human technology, with a bit of Sankheili sort of technology thrown in as well. And the Halo the the USS Infinity, the ship in Halo 4 and in Halo 5 and Halo Infinite, that ship was made to be an exploratory ship. It was made to go into deep space to explore, kind of like Star Trek and Mass Effect Andromeda, to go into deep space to find planets, to find life, to find new things, to be explorers. And sadly, the way Halo 4 story went is that they find themselves, tracking down Chief and going from there. But the whole point of the ship originally was to go to other Halo installations, to go to other Forerunner bases and other planets, to get technology, to get data, but also to explore other worlds. And this is what 343 could have done. They could have done that. They could have, you are either, if they want to stick with the Spartans, can't go with Halo Reach. Start somebody with a brand new Spartan, brand new. They can choose their gender. They can choose the way they look. They can choose their colors. They can choose their emblems, like Halo Reach, and go from there. Being like kind of like Halo, kind of like Mass Effect Andromeda, where they go off to a new sector of the Milky Way and find that there was like a new alien race there, and then we end up getting into war with them, and then we ended up finding there's more than the Forerunners, that there were other advanced races or other old ancient races that were like or find even the fact that if you go into the deep lore of Halo, that humanity at one stage humanity was around when the Forerunners were around, and we were very technologically advanced, and we were the original holders of the mantle of responsibility. But the Forerunners didn't like that, so the Forerunners went to war with us, virtually destroying mankind. Luckily, we were saved by the Didact and his wife, well, primarily the Didact's wife, the Forerunner lady from Halo 4. She saved us so that we could, no, we wouldn't be wiped out, but we'd have to start again from the caveman days. We wouldn't have the technology or knowledge of what we once were. They could go as far as doing that. They could have old human structures, and we learn more about the fact that humanity is a lot older than we thought. We were once incredibly advanced, and more advanced than the Forerunners were, and that sort of thing. And again, there's many ways they could have done that. And as somebody who's a very creative mind, who is a writer, it would tickle me pink so much, just be the idea of I could do whatever I want with the Halo world. They could still keep it feeling like Halo, but just do a new alien race. They could even the fact of you've got the Sankheili. It's like the Arbiter is giving you some of his best soldiers and best scientists to go off with you, kind of like Star Trek, to go off and to explore the galaxy. And you could have an elite companion. If you don't want to get rid of the elites, if you don't want to get rid of the grunts, then you could still have them there as a very cross species exploration initiative. There's many ways that 343 could have gone, but 343 didn't, and they just went for route one, bring back Master Chief. That's what people want. I'm like, yeah, we love Master Chief, but for a couple of years now, we've been given new stories, and we want new stories, and Halo fans want new experiences. Even if you're just going to go route one with a Spartan, that's fine. You just don't have to make it Master Chief. And the problem is the fact of 343 went route one completely, no imagination whatsoever. Route 1 Master Chief brought him back with Halo 4, completely changed it. They even admitted with Halo 4 that they were copying Call of Duty. They weren't even copying the formula that they were given by Bungie. It's like they completely scrubbed that and went, nope, that can go in the trash. What's popular and what makes money is COD. We're doing that. And they've admitted themselves later on. You can find articles where the directors of like Frank O'Connor and stuff like that, where they talked about the fact of we didn't know what we were doing. We were basically copying what was popular, and what was popular at the time was Call of Duty. They tried to make Call of Duty with that, and that's why Halo 4, even though Halo 4 is not a bad game, Halo 4 feels like Call of Duty because that's what the archetype, that's what they use to copy, you know. Um, and I could go on for ages ranting about it, and I've already felt like I've ranted about it too much than I want to. I will go into more detail on it when I eventually get around to doing a proper um, deep discussion into 343 and the state of Halo now. But yeah, in my opinion, Bungie had basically ended the story Master Chief, and that they wanted to move on to new stories, and they set it up for new stories to be had that didn't involve Chief. But when 343 came along, through no imagination whatsoever, they just carried it on, the story of Chief, which didn't need to be. They really, I think it would have been better if the fact that they did different stories, and that again 10, 15, 12 years down the line, they brought Chief back, and it would have been a very much like, I haven't seen Chief in ages. This is good. Don't get me wrong, I was excited for Halo 4 when it was announced, and to bring Chief back, I was excited. But I would have been happy also if they brought a new Halo out that had nothing to do with Chief. You know what I mean? I would have been just as excited. And that's what I'm trying to say, is the fact of, Bungie made a masterpiece, and they was expanding the lore, and I was here for the expansion, but 343 just took it and went back to Route 1. And they went backwards, and they took many steps backwards, and they still are taking many steps backwards, and it's just it's a shame. But yeah, that's my theory behind Bungie, that they wanted to end it, and 343 basically kill it. It's that Simpsons joke, isn't it, where he keeps beating it, and the little kid's going, "Stop it, please, stop it. He's dead. Stop it." That's basically what Halo is now. But if you want the full sort of board explanation behind that and my full breakdown, well, you're gonna have to listen next week when I eventually get round to doing the 343 explanation of Halo. So that's something to look forward to, and it gives you a reason to stay tuned. And maybe next week, hint hint, we'll get the ending of that one. So yeah, so that's my explanation on what I think Bungie wanted to do with Halo, and what they did do with Halo. So that's that. So let's quickly end it, shall we? Let's not quickly end it, but let's wrap it up, shall we? And finally, to wrap it all up, I want to give a special mention to Halo Wars. I don't really have a lot to say about it, mainly because I haven't really played Halo Wars for a long time, and actually the first time playing Halo Wars was only a couple of years ago when it was free on Game Pass. And the reason I never played Halo Wars was because I'm not really big on real-time strategy games. I played them and I enjoyed them, but I'm very picky. I'm very much kind of Lord of the Rings Conquest, and what was the other one? It was I think I've said a Command and Conquer. There was one more, but it's not coming to mind. I've lost it. But there are a small few real-time strategy games that I do like, but I wasn't a big fan on when they mentioned that they were going to bring Halo into the real-time strategy. I had a few friends that played it, enjoyed it. When I eventually got around to playing it, I did enjoy it. But I will say it's very much bare bones. It's not as complex as the ones that I was used to playing in the past. And that's not a bad thing. It's just I just felt like the fact of, because it's Halo, it needs to be introductory so that fans of Halo who are maybe not fans of real-time strategy games could come in and play it, and it'll sort of enjoy it, and not get frustrated with it. So in that respect, as a strategy game, it works, but it's not it didn't blow me away, shall we say. But the reason I give it a special mention is because even though it was made by Ensemble Studios, it was done in partnership with Bungie during 2009. um, Bungie worked closely with them to craft the narrative, to craft the world, and they did a fantastic job. In the narrative perspective, it is a very interesting story. Um, again, it's not following on the story of Master Chief. It's a different, separate story. It follows on a different, band of Spartans. It follows on a different band of people. You know, um, it's a very interesting story, and it gets, and with Halo Wars 2, it gets expanded, and one of the, even though it wasn't great and it wasn't well received, Halo Wars 2 is not that bad of a game, and it carries on the story here. And it's probably, I was going to say, probably the only story that 343 has done that doesn't involve Master Chief, which is funny. But yeah, overall, it's a good game, and I give it special mention because Bungie had a hand in crafting it. Um, so yeah, that's one little thing I want to mention before we wrap up. But yeah, overall, like I said, I'm a big Halo fan. I really am. I am a huge Halo fan. My favorite era of Halo was the Bungie era. Like I said, I've played Halo 4. I've played Halo 5. I've played a tiny bit of Halo Infinite, but as you can see, as I start mentioning those names, I slowly but surely start to get deflated. And by the time I get to Halo Infinite, I'm just completely. I don't have a lot to say about it. I will be honest with you folks now. I haven't completed Halo Infinite. I played the first hour and then I stopped playing, um, which I won't explain as to why, because you'll have to tune in next week to find out why. I know, quite cheeky of me to kind of tease you like that, but gotta keep people coming back. Everyone wanting more. Um, but yeah, I'm not a big fan. Let's just say that I'm not a big fan of the 343 era of Halo, and I feel that 343 should just put in the towel now, and just be like, we're gonna go back to Microsoft and be like, we hand back the reins of Halo, and give it to somebody else, give it to another studio, whatever game studio Bungie owns, any of them, and give them a shot at Halo. Um, because I feel that if 343 is not a bad studio, it's just they don't know what they're doing in terms of Halo. So I feel like if 343 were given free reign to do whatever they wanted that wasn't Halo, a brand new complete IP, I feel like 343 would probably do a fantastic job and come up with something quite new and different and um, fantastic. I feel like generally they could do that. Problem is the fact of they're just stinted with Halo, and that they could have done something good with Halo, but they've bricked themselves into a wall. Especially now with Halo Infinite, they've really, really bricked themselves into the wall, and now they're stuck. And now they can't break free because this is the kind of the grave that they've dug for themselves. Um, so it's their own fault. But again, I will go into that more detail next time. But um, overall, Bungie's era of Halo is the best Halo. It's the one I recommend to people the most. I always recommend to people play Halo Reach, just for the story alone. Get the Master Chief Collection on Xbox One. Play for the Master Chief Collection. I think you have to pay. It's like not a lot of money, like £4 to £5 to play Halo Reach and to play Halo ODST. Um, but either way, like they're worth it. Their stories are definitely worth it for it to experience, especially when you've gone through Master Chief's story. If you want something new and something fresh, definitely play for ODST and play for Reach, and just kind of have a fresh air, a different sort of take on the Halo story, but it's still very much Halo. So yeah, so that's my Halo special for 343 anyway. Maybe tune in next week for the really deflated and not so positive version of Halo, 343's take on the genre. And yeah, so it's time for wrap it up here. Follow me on Twitter, Nerdstalgic_pod. Um, you can find the Nerdstalgic podcast on Anchor FM and Spotify. Majority of people are probably listening on Spotify anyway, but just to let anybody new listening, you can find the Nerdstalgic podcast on Spotify, and you can find it on the Anchor FM app. And once again, sort of just to reiterate, follow me on Twitter, nerdstalgic_pod, and that's about it. So I hope you enjoyed yourself. Hope I didn't waffle on too much. Hope I didn't bore anybody. Like I said, Halo is a topic I have much love for and I'm incredibly passionate about. And I just generally hope that you folks enjoyed it. So, as always, stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace. And thank you for listening to today's episode.